Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about should you study the liberal arts? So, first off, I myself actually have a liberal arts degree. I graduated from the James Madison College at Michigan State University with a degree in political theory and constitutional democracy. But in particular, the James Madison program was designed in the 1970s to be a residential liberal arts college for the study of public affairs and government inside of the larger university structure. And I wanted to make this video today because as somebody who has a liberal arts degree and actually can't think of anything else that they really would have wanted to study, I was at a large university and I could have studied any number of topics. I could have studied, in the natural sciences, I could have studied engineering, I could have studied in the social sciences, and yet when I decided to go to Michigan State and I decided on James Madison College, I knew that that is exactly what I wanted to be doing. And I know the liberal arts gets a lot of hate these days, in particular because there are a lot of grads who are out there who maybe got a liberal arts degree from a smaller college or from some private university. And, maybe they do regret that decision. I know, obviously, with the price of college here in the United States being so high, you get a lot of people who leave college with those kind of soft degrees that only give them kind of soft skills. And they end up, really kind of resentful because maybe the jobs that they were looking for aren't there, or they feel like they're forced to go into some kind of a graduate program that they didn't want to, and they have, a hard time paying off that debt. And that's unfortunate for the people that happens to. But overall, I don't think it actually necessarily reflects on the value of a liberal arts education. Now, there are some caveats I want to make to that. I think in some ways, the liberal arts has changed, especially over the last 50 years from what it originally was. And so some of the people who are coming out with those degrees aren't coming out being prepared in the same way that students who used to study the liberal arts would have been. So let's walk this back a little bit. The liberal arts actually used to be 7 core subjects. It used to be grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, music, astronomy. And those used to be the original liberal arts. And you would usually study Latin as well as part of that education. And that together was seen as sort of the course of study, or the core subjects that you needed to know in order to be a well-rounded human being. In order to be a human being who is liberal in the sense of not necessarily progressive politics, but liberal in the sense of free, someone who is enabled to make free choices in the world and who can really think for themselves. And critical thinking would have been, of course, a part of this. And I think one of the things that people get confused a lot these days is they tend to associate the liberal arts with almost like certain political indoctrination. And that has to do with the corruption of the liberal arts, in my opinion, by particular schools of thought, in particular critical theory. And so people confuse things like critical thinking with critical theory, and those are certainly not the same thing at all. They're very, very far off from one another. And so the original goal of the liberal arts was to make free people. And the idea behind this is that you can't actually have a democracy where the citizens are entrusted with power, where the power comes from the people, and that's where the sovereignty resides, and have it be functional without independent, autonomous human beings who are capable of rational thought by themselves, who can act in ways that are in their own best interest and in the best interest of the greater good, without needing some sort of outside authority like a government or a king to just sort of tell them what to be doing. And so the original goal of the liberal arts is to make free people. And it's unfortunate that much of that has been corrupted these days. And I think that has to do with a lot of the reason why there's so much hate for the liberal arts. But in this video, I'm going to make the case, for why you actually should study the liberal arts. So, of course, if you're going to go to college for that, and as we've already talked about, the price of college is just astronomical, especially in the United States these days. And so there is a question of, well, is it worth it to really be studying these things at all? And that really comes down to, what is the purpose of a college education? Is the purpose of a college education to be career training, right? Are they training you to be able to go and be good at getting jobs? That's what a lot of people think about when they go to college. They think, well, I'm going to go and study the thing that's going to get me the best possible job when I'm out of here. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be what prepares you the best for living a full, fulfilled, complete, and interesting life. I think that you don't necessarily have to study the liberal arts in order to do that. There are a lot of people who have technical degrees, who have engineering degrees, who have mathematics degrees. Now, one thing to note here is that mathematics was originally part of the liberal arts education, even though now a lot of liberal arts grads have very little math, or maybe they don't take any at all while they're in school. But I think that you can still study those more technical subjects. I think that you can still be a little bit more career oriented, and still make your way through something like a liberal arts education, something like a great books course on your own time after college, if you decide to do that. One person who's kind of an advocate of that is Naval Ravikant, and he actually says, don't go to college to study, the humanities. Don't study it at all in school where you'd have to pay for it. All the books that are available there are relatively cheap. Most of them are in the public domain because they're really, really old. And so you can even get them for free online. And so why would you go pay thousands of dollars, to get it taught to you, to have to go to those kinds of classes when in fact, it's not going to necessarily put you into the best position in the workforce when you're done. And my counter argument to that is that there actually is some value to going through a liberal arts education and going through the process of dialogos with your fellow classmates in little small seminars and learning from your professors. And many of the professors that you're going to learn from, if you're in a good school, like a place like James Madison College or like Hillsdale or one of the other really well-known sort of more classical oriented liberal arts programs, is you're going to run into professors who have been spending their entire lives learning this stuff and teaching it. And often, because of the nature of the liberal arts schools, their focus is more on teaching than it might be in other areas. And so they actually care about teaching. They're actually passionate about teaching, and they actually do view themselves as trying to make these students autonomous, interesting, creative, independent individuals in the world. I studied under professors who, studied under Harvey Mansfield, for example, the Straussian at Harvard. And they are extremely intelligent, extremely articulate, extremely knowledgeable about their various kinds of fields. And the questions that they will pose to you and the things that they will bring up both in class as well as in outside of class, if you go into their office hours, or in my case, I went on a study abroad in Italy with a few of my professors, and I learned so much from them about how to think about life, about how to think about my education. And I don't think I would have done that if I would have gone down a more, a more practical, let's say practical, although I disagree on that, career path. I think that if you get a liberal arts degree and it's a good one, now that's a big caveat because there are bad ones out there, as I've said earlier, then it's true that you're not going to be the most prepared to get a high paying job right when you leave college. It is going to be more of a struggle for you. But I think that if you take the education seriously and you actually take the lessons to heart about what is the good life, what is justice, how to live a fulfilling life, how to be a well-rounded, balanced human being, what it is that we're supposed to be doing here, what's my obligation to my community, to my city, to my family. If you go through the trouble of answering these questions for yourself, it's going to be a little bit more of a bumpy road maybe than somebody who's just sort of slotting into a role. They're getting a degree for a particular type of job. They're going to do it in 4 years, and then they're going to be done, and then they're going to go right into that job, and then they're going to spend their career in that job. That person's going to have an easier time, but they're also not trying to address these very difficult and eternal human questions. And I think that if you go through the trouble of doing that for yourself, of actually thinking for yourself, rather than taking something that's pre-made for you, you stand a better chance of actually living a much more interesting and colorful life. So those are my thoughts on getting a liberal arts education. Again, I'm not going to tell you whether you should do it one way or the other. I think that if you're interested in it, you should try to find a really, really good program, and you should definitely go for it. I think that also, if you are already out of college, or you decided not to go to college at all, and you're interested in studying the liberal arts, I would get into a book club to go read the great books. Try to find a community around you that can help you support that exploration, because I do think it does matter to study the great works of human history. I think you should study philosophy and literature and art and all of these different works that have been created over time, and that literal geniuses have left behind for you. There's no reason to think that the people who are alive a few hundred or even a few thousand years ago are any dumber than the people who are alive now, simply because they didn't have access to the internet. They may not know as many facts. They may be confused about certain things that we now know, about more certainly, aspects of science and so forth. But in general, their intelligence was extremely high, and some of the smartest human beings who've ever lived have written their knowledge and their information and their insights down for you, and it's up to you to go find it and go study it. So those are my thoughts on getting a liberal arts education. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think it's worth it to study the liberal arts? Do you yourself have a liberal arts degree? Do you agree with Naval that you can just sort of study it on your own time rather than pay for it in college? I think that there's lots of different ways to go on this. So let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.